Hi and welcome back. We're in the throes of another heat wave here in the UK, so I'm going to be painting a really quick semi-abstract landscape demo today using the wet in wet technique. And my large calligraphy brush, it's got a sort of, I think, a 3-inch goat hair brush head, and I'm going to wet my page all over. Plenty of water because, as I say, it's drying out quite quickly. And then let's get on with some really hot colours. Alizarin crimson and yellow ochre just dashed across the page, and then lots of almost tube strength indigo. So I'm being very loose and quite random with what I'm doing, but I'm trying to keep the indigo at the top of the page and the red glow across the horizon. And then for the land, just the suggestion of a hill. I'm spraying it with my water mister. My board is at an angle of 45 degrees, which is why things are running down the page. With the water, it's flowing, and now I've turned my board around just onto the corner, and you can see I'm getting a sort of diagonal flow. So I'm adjusting the direction of the flow of paint and water by tipping and tilting my board. Whichever direction I want it to go is the way that I would tilt it. So bear in mind that you can do this with your washes. And you can see here that as I flick in a quick bit of foreground using the same brush, that I'm building up a sky that's beginning to look quite interesting. This is a very enjoyable and unpredictable technique that it's well worth trying. It takes a bit of practice. To start with, you may end up just with lots of mud and things like that, but don't be discouraged. If you keep going, then you'll find you discover some ways of creating really beautiful washes. I've just lifted out just a faint hill horizon line with my 3/4 inch flat brush, and now back to my large calligraphy brush with some much drier Payne's grey. This mix has to be quite rich and not watery, so dab your brush out on a tissue or cloth first. If it's too watery, going into the damp sky wash like this for the trees will produce nasty marks and cauliflowers, but because the paint is drier than the actual page itself, it's staying there. It'll dry back a lot lighter, but hopefully this will give me my hilltop trees. And then using a piece of plastic store card and using the corner to etch through the damp paint, I'm sort of painting in my trees, so to speak, with the card. So I'm painting in trunks and a few branches, linking the hill to the tree canopies. And hopefully you can see that the painting is beginning to come together, even though it's very loose and it's very abstract. I'm hoping that it's beginning to suggest the scene a little more clearly. I forgot to say, I'm using a piece of Milford cold-pressed watercolour paper here, and it's taped to my board with ordinary decorators masking tape, and my board is usually 45 degrees, but now it's flat to keep the washes in place. I'm now going to leave it to dry completely. So here's the dry wash, and it's dried back a lot lighter. Watercolour always dries back lighter, which is why it's a good idea to paint a lot more strongly than you think that you need to start with. I'm now going to just add a few little finishing touches just to bring this painting together. I can see across on the left that there's been a bit of a drip just there, and I'm thinking that if I turn that into a fence post or a gate post, that it will be fairly effective. And then so I'm going to have a fence just leading up the hill towards the trees, so that my fence posts will eventually become sort of narrower and shorter as they recede into the distance towards the top of the hill where we have that lovely hanging wood. I'm using my 3/4 inch flat brush for this. I find it really useful if I just use the tip to very quickly create these loose fence post railings or gates. So remember that if you try something like this technique isn't something that's really repeatable. It's a very unpredictable way of painting, but I think that's half the fun, because you never know how it's going to turn out. And it can be a great way of producing some really sort of unexpected effects. I'm really pleased with the way the sky looks here, and that pink glow against the indigo sky, which is it's quite a sort of serene combination of colours, but it looks really windswept because the directionality of the way that the washes have dried. I know this sort of style of painting isn't sort of everyone's cup of tea, but it can be a really liberating way to experiment, to take the pressure off yourself and just to really enjoy learning about the flow of paint and water and gravity. I don't think I'm going to do much more to this. I think it just needs to have just a few finishing touches, and I'm going to use a small squirrel mop and a bit more of the Payne's grey mixture and layer up on these canopies that I created wet in wet. So I'm going to go in with wet paint onto the dry page and just darken up the canopies in a few places. I will then use my calligraphy brush, my small one, and go in and do the same for a few of the tree trunks. Just darken them up, put them in a bit of shadow below the canopies. And I can add in a few more branch details if I want to. But I'm not going to do too much, just enough to build up a little bit of dark and sort of depth across the branches and things like that. And then for a finishing touch, using my small Pro Art synthetic sword liner brush, I'm going to flick in a few birds with the indigo. Not too many, just having them looking like they're wheeling on the wind, just having a last little fly before landing to roost for the night in the trees. So I think they add a nice little touch of movement to this painting. So I'm going to call that finished. As I said, a nice, quick, loose, semi-abstract landscape. So I'm going to remove the tape, pulling it away from the painting, because sometimes it will tear, but if you pull the tape away from the painting, you won't tear the actual painting itself. And here it is with its clean white border, and I think it looks really nice. I like the softness of the colours. I like the upward incline of the hill and the flight of the birds against the windswept dusk twilight sky. For me, loose painting is all about creating a sort of an illusion, but without too much detail, just suggesting things. So if we zoom in closely, you can see that there's nothing really defined. I haven't really painted very much, so to speak. I've used the wet in wet techniques and mark making techniques to create an illusion. The dry brush behind the fence really helps to bring the painting to life as well. So I hope that was helpful. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thank you so much to my wonderful Patreon group who support this channel. And I'll see you again soon, and happy painting. Bye.